Hey everyone, today we're setting off on a really cool journey. We're going to figure out how we make sense of the world around us, not by guessing, but by following the clues that data leaves for us. So, let's just jump right in.
This right here, this is the central question, isn't it? I mean, we are absolutely swimming in information. It's everywhere. Raw facts, kind of messy, all disconnected. So how in the world do we take all of that raw stuff and turn it into a story that's actually clear and powerful? Well, that's exactly the journey we're on today.
You know, every journey has to start somewhere. And for us, that first step is getting to know the data itself. So what exactly are these building blocks we're going to be working with? At its heart, statistical data is really just information. That's it. It could be numbers, it could be descriptions, but it's the raw material we gather to do pretty much anything, from planning a business to doing major scientific research, or even just satisfying our own curiosity.
Okay, so all data, and I mean all of it, can be sorted into two big families. On one side, you've got numeric data. This is anything you can count or measure. Think about counting the number of apples in a basket. Then on the other side, you have non-numeric data. This is all about what you can observe or put into a category, like the color of those apples. Are they red, green, or yellow? So one is about how many, and the other is about what kind. And believe it or not, we can get even more specific. Numeric data can be discrete. That means it's a whole number you can count, like the number of students in a class, right? You can't have half a student. Or it can be continuous, meaning it can be any value in a range, like a person's weight. And on the other side, non-numeric data can be categorical, things like gender, or ordinal, where there's a built-in order, like the rank of a soldier. Now, knowing these little differences is actually a huge deal, because it tells you what kind of math you can do and which charts will actually make sense later on. Okay, so we know what data is, but where does it actually come from? This brings us to the next leg of our journey, the expedition to go out and gather our building blocks. So there are really two main ways to get your hands on data. First, you can go out and gather it yourself. We call that primary data. Imagine you're conducting your very own survey. The data is fresh, and it's perfectly designed to answer your specific question. The other way is to use data that somebody else has already collected, like census data from the government. That's secondary data. Now, it's way faster and cheaper to use for sure, but you have to remember, it wasn't collected with you in mind. And when it comes to getting that fresh primary data, researchers have a few classic tools in their toolkit. They can send out questionnaires in the mail, they can conduct interviews either face-to-face or on the phone, or they can just use plain old observation to see how people behave in the real world. Each method, of course, has its own pros and cons.
Now, let's be realistic. Collecting data from every single person or every single thing is, well, it's usually impossible. I mean, can you imagine trying to survey every single voter in an entire country? No way. And that is exactly why statisticians came up with an incredibly powerful shortcut. It's called sampling. First things first, we have to define our population. And this is just a fancy word for the entire group we're interested in. It could be all the students at a university, all the trees in a forest, or, every single online review ever written for a brand new movie. It's the whole shebang. So, instead of trying to look at that entire population, we take a sample. It's a much smaller group that we choose specifically to represent the larger one. Think of it like this. You don't need to drink a whole pot of soup to know if it's too salty, right? You just taste a spoonful. That spoonful, that's your sample. But this is also where it gets a little risky. If that spoonful isn't a good representation, like if you only scooped salt from the top, your conclusion about the whole pot is going to be totally wrong.
And this just shows you the incredible power of sampling when you do it right. Why on earth would you try to analyze 10 million movie reviews when you can get a really accurate picture by carefully looking at just 1,000? I mean, the efficiency is just staggering.
So, sampling isn't about being lazy. It is all about being smart. It saves a ton of money, it saves a ton of time, and honestly, by focusing your resources on a smaller group, you can often get even more accurate results. It just makes the whole process manageable. All right, we've defined our data, we've collected it, we use sampling to make it manageable, and now we have finally arrived at the destination of our journey, turning those raw numbers into a story you can actually see. Okay, so here's some data on student enrollment, laid out in a table. I mean, look, all the info is there. Accountancy has 60 students, marketing has 40. It's accurate. But is it insightful? Does it really grab you? Not really. Now, watch the magic happen. Boom! It's the exact same data, but now it's a bar chart. And just like that, your brain can process it. You can see in a split second that accountancy is the biggest department and marketing is the smallest. The comparison is instant. It's effortless. That is the power of visualization. And check this out. We can tell different parts of the story with different charts. This donut chart uses the very same numbers but focuses on the proportions. Now we see that accountancy makes up 30% of all the students, while business admin and banking/finance each have a quarter of the pie. See? It's all about choosing the right visual for the story you want to tell.
So, after all that, what's the moral of our story? This journey wasn't just about memorizing some definitions. Nope. It was about giving you a toolkit, a new set of skills for understanding this data-filled world that we all live in.
So let's recap that journey real quick. It's 4 simple steps. First, you classify your data. Then, you collect it, making that choice between primary and secondary sources. Next, you sample to work smart, not hard. And finally, you visualize it to bring that hidden story to life. This 4-step process is your map for turning raw facts into real, solid insight. And that brings us to the end. But you know what? It's also a beginning. You now have the map for the journey of data. So the final question isn't really for me to answer. It's for you. Now that you know the way, what stories are you going to find?